So, hello, Brad. Welcome to my podcast, One for the Road. I'm so honored that you're on as a guest today. We've been talking for a long time now, but when I first got sober, I started exploring social media and you used to pop up all the time, Brad Mcleod. And it's like, oh my God, this man's a legend. And you are. And we become friends, although we're across the pond from each other. And I'm just so grateful you joined me today because your story is incredible, mate. So thank you so much.
Of course, sober Dave. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I guess we'll find out and see how incredible it is.
Well, it is incredible, mate. So should we get straight in there and let's wind it back to the beginning, what it was like for you growing up, where you grew up, and go from there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I was born in Canada, Ontario, and my mom was a single mom. She was 16 at the time. She had twins. I have a twin brother.
Wow.
Interesting fact. Yeah, so she had a lot of responsibility right out of the gate. And I mean, me, I couldn't imagine that, right? Like having twins at 16. When I was 16, it was really hard for me to look after myself. My dad really wasn't around much. Yeah, I mean, they were young too, right? So that threw a little wrench in it. But we lived with my grandparents. So we lived in my grandparents' place, a 5 bedroom house. My grandmother did the home daycare. So she was always around, really good with us and a lot of attention, right? Grandparents, a lot of attention you get, usually kind of get what you want. Not all the time, but probably more frequently than from my mom. So she was going back to school. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and she went back to school. She went to finish high school, went to college to be a nurse. So then when she went to be a nurse, they were really hiring a lot of jobs in the US. And I think that she wanted a little bit of freedom from like living with her parents and kind of a new start, right? So we actually moved when I was about 6 years old. We moved all the way to Texas. So that was a big transition. And when I look back, that's kind of when I really started to feel out of place in the world. That was really when I was really uncomfortable, really anxious. I mean, we went from a very secure living environment, right? Everything was looked after. There was a lot of stimulation. There was other people to play with. It was really what we knew. We had a lot of family around and a lot of things like that. And then went to this like completely foreign place. And then it was just my mom looking after us, right? Which was tough, right? When you start out in your nursing career, you're working evenings and sleep during the day and babysitters and all
Yeah.
that stuff. I wasn't used to it.
Yeah. That's a real culture shock, isn't it? 6 years old. Well, any age, really, isn't it? To move countries, different environment, left your friends behind, start again.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, and then going to school. A lot of people too around that age, they'd already maybe done kindergarten and they knew each other and there was relationships, right? So 6, 7, 8. It was really hard to get connected, right? Yeah, I mean the culture like definitely is different. I mean, it's not like massively different, but it was different, right? Not a lot of people understood like Canada. It's kind of like this foreign place, like you came from another planet and just
Yeah.
touched on here, right? So
How did you fit in then when you went to school?
I don't think I ever fit in
No.
after after that for a long time.
Yeah. And how did that impact on you when you reached 10, 11, 12?
Yeah, I mean, it was around that time too. I started seeing a lot of like psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors, because I was really behavioral, like a huge behavioral problem. I never was interested in school. In schoolwork, I couldn't pay attention, I couldn't focus. So it was around that time too. I'm learning more and more. There was a lot of young boys specifically that it was just the behaviors were out of control, right? So they had this medication, ADHD medication, Adderall, Ritalin, and that was I was put on different medications like that so I could try to follow the rules because I had a really hard time doing that. When I look back, I mean, I was just looking to be noticed,
Right.
and to get noticed, I had to go to the extremes. I would never get recognized for doing well in school, right? Because school is just pushed on us to just do well in school, do well in school. Hey, if you got a 90, stand up. If you did an 80, stand up, get a praise from your peers. I never did well ever. I don't even know if I passed the test, to be honest with you, until I got to college, sober Dave. So
Yeah.
I just felt like I was on the outside of those conversations. And your peers, you also connect based on your, how well you're doing in the academics, right? And I
Yeah.
was just so embarrassed. Like, why can't I? And that went through my entire school life, is just like, why can't I just get this stuff? And I never was interested. I never read any of the books. I never did homework, like maybe once or twice or a few times. My parents would force me, but then that also caused a lot of friction at home, because your parents want you to do well, right? Because you do well in school, then you get a good job and you live a stress-free life and you have a family and you buy a house, and
Yeah.
my parents wanted that for me, and I just never got it.
It doesn't work out like that. So was it you, your mum, and your twin brother then?
Yeah, it was my mom, my twin brother. And then my mom met my stepdad too in Texas. They used to work at the hospital there. So my stepdad came into the picture probably around that age. I should know this, Dave, but I don't know the
Mm.
exact timing. But I would say probably about like 9, 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you felt like a loner. This is really resonating with me, actually. I was a little bit older, but my school went out the window. I just wasn't interested. I lost interest in life, I think. I was on a different planet myself. That's before I started drinking. I started getting into trouble. I remember I tripped up the PE teacher. I was just in the corridor, and he was a big man as well. And he walked past me, and I stuck my foot out, and he went absolutely flying. And he grabbed me by my ear and dragged me into the headmistress's office. But she had a little bit of a soft spot for me because I was a cheeky chappy. And she said to me, "Oh, go on, get out of here," kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I got away with it. But it was all attention seeking because I felt so alone, so isolated. I didn't really fit in.
Yeah. Same, Dave.
Yeah.
I didn't trip the principal, but I did many, many things, or the teacher, but I did many things over the years that when at the time I had no idea. Like I really had
Yeah.
no idea about what was going on or what was happening. I never talked to anybody about it. Like I would go and
Right.
see therapists and doctors, and I used to go to learning centers too. I mean, I hated it, Dave. I
Mm.
hated it. I would go to school all day, and my folks would have me signed up to go to this learning center, and you'd go in this cubicle, and they would just like so quiet, and I couldn't wait to have to use the washroom, Dave. I couldn't
Mm.
wait. Then I could just get up and move. And it was like I was and it's funny you mentioned it too there, because like this stuff before drinking and before drugs, I mean, I was already struggling big time.
Mm.
I had things I would do to escape before I
Mm.
found like the home run, or what I thought would be, exactly that.
Yeah. And the thing is, when 9, 10, 11 is slightly different from when you start hitting the teens, right? Because most people I talk to on this podcast, they say 13, 14, they started to drink and take drugs, right? How was that for you? How old were you when you started dabbling with that?
Yeah, I didn't start until after high school actually. And
Yeah.
there's a few reasons probably for that. I got wrapped up in some crime. So I got wrapped up in some crime, and when I was 16, I got caught with a couple of the buddies. We were going into garages and helping ourselves to people's stuff, and we got busted for this. We lived in a small at this time I'm living in North Carolina, so we made the move. We're living in this up and coming suburb. It's called Apex, the peak of good living. And I mean, it's rated like probably top 10 US cities, of oldest cities. So it was a really like suburb type place, and heavily policed place. So I got caught for this, and I got charged with a couple felony charges, and I got put on probation, man. In the state of North Carolina, when you're 16, you're an adult in the legal system. So I got booked into the county jail, and I thought I was going to change my life right then and there, Dave. And the reason for that was I got booked into this jail, and they take you in, they do your fingerprints, and and everything. And then they put you in this holding cell. And there's this fella, he's probably 18, 19. And he's just crying. And he's on the phone and he's like, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And he must be talking to his mom or something. And then he called an attorney. And I kind of broke the jailhouse cardinal rule because I had no idea about this stuff. But I asked the fella, like, what are you in here for? Well, I was like, why is he so upset? And he had mentioned that he had been booked in for killing his girlfriend. And right in that moment in New York City, and then he was taking the trains down to Florida. And right in that moment, Dave, I had this weird warm thing go over my body of like, what have I gotten myself into? Like a little bit of horseplay, a little bit of like acting like a teenager, a little bit of peer pressure, a little bit of acceptance. How did I end up here where I'm in like the big house downtown, 9 stories? I mean, it's just terrifying the place. And I got out of there. My parents bailed me out, obviously. And I got out and I thought for sure, like, that's, I had my fun. It's all done now. Just lasted for a couple days though. So that happened. I got put on felony probation and I had this probation officer. I mean, she was tough as an iron. She was so strict. She used to come to the school with her sidearm. She'd have her pistol on her belt and her jacket said probation on the back in yellow writing. Sit outside the classroom door and make sure I was going to class. But they used to drug test me. So they used to drug test me. Somebody would watch you. So there's no really way of fooling it. Plus, I really wasn't a quote unquote cool kid. So I wasn't invited to the parties or my folks didn't drink. Well, they did drink, but I never saw them drink or drunk or anything like that. So I just really wasn't around it. So that was probably the delay. And then I had mental health stuff go on. So I ended up in the psych ward twice for thoughts of suicide. I talked with my school counselor about thoughts of suicide, and the police came and brought me to the hospital, and I stayed there for a couple days. And all through high school, it was just a mess. I had codependent relationships too, which were just, I mean, it was a dumpster fire, Dave. It was just poured gasoline on the fire because I couldn't stand on my own. So my life and my emotions would be just dictated by other people, and it wasn't a healthy, we were just kids, right? Like we didn't know, I don't think anybody had any, ill intentions, but we just didn't know, right? We got wrapped up in that, and it was bad.
How old was you there?
That was 16 when all that started. And then things went downhill. Things went downhill after that. And then the second time I ended up in the psychiatric hospital, my parents were wanting me to get some help, like treatment, and not for addiction, but for behavioral mental health. Like, cause I was destroying the home. I was running away. I was failing out of school. I was in trouble with the law. I wasn't following the rules at the house. I was getting suspended from school. Well, you name it. It was part of the journey. So they had this guy come in. He said, yeah, we've got this 3-month program, Brad. It's like 90 minutes from your house. You can come here and you can come for this couple months and, get things straightened out. We'll get you back on your feet, get you feeling good and back into the world and, do some good out there. And I was like, yeah, okay. It ain't happening. There's nothing wrong with me, which it's wild thinking back, Dave, that everything was so chaotic and I was still in the denial that I was going to figure. I thought in my mind that this would all just blow over, it would just switch up one day. It would all just switch up and all make sense. And I would move on with my life and be a doctor or a lawyer or something. It wasn't the case. So then my parents came up with this other intervention. They were going to send me forcibly to this other facility. So I woke up one day and there was this guy who was kicking the bed in the hospital, the metal bed. He's kicking on it like 7 a.m. And I didn't have my glasses on. So I saw this guy to the corner. I'm a big guy. And mostly the people who worked there in the hospital, nurses, right? So I said, man, something's up. Something's up here. This guy said, yeah, your parents have hired us to take you to a rehab program. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to the rehab program. And they were like, no, here's the paperwork and stuff. You really don't have a choice. You have to go to the program. So I packed it up. I packed up my stuff and This was a private security company, transport company that my folks had hired to bring me to this program that I didn't know anything about. And the only thing I ever knew how to do up to that point in my life was run.
Yeah.
I couldn't face any problems. And as soon as we started heading down to the parking garage to jump in their car, I was already planning my escape. So we were driving on I-95 headed to Knoxville, Tennessee, right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, a place called Peninsula Village. And I told the fella, I got to, and there was another lady there too driving. I told him, I said, I got to use the washroom. I got to go to the bathroom. So we stopped and I just told myself, like, this is just it, right? You're going to split. And he was holding the back of my shorts. I had a pair of basketball shorts on. He's holding the back of my shorts. And I just had this impulse. I was just so impulsive. I couldn't stop. And I just split. I just ran. I was on the run for a couple of hours, but due to the history of the suicidal thoughts and being in the hospital, they put the whole force showed up, the whole police force around there, state troopers, sheriffs, local police, everybody. And within a couple hours, they'd pick me up. The police did. I couldn't run anymore. I ran through an entire beehive. The adrenaline was running. I went through this beehive and I got stung so many times, and it was probably 100 degrees that day. And that's kind of when I had this feeling. I actually opened up for the first time in my entire life. 17 years old, sitting in the back of this security car. No more Mr. Nice Guy after that either, Dave. They threw handcuffs on me, the security detail. But I broke down. I was just like, I don't know how my life has gotten here. Like, it kind of slapped me in the face.
Yeah.
That I don't know how I ended up here. So yeah, that's kind of leading up to about that 17 when I went there, Peninsula Village.
That's the story already, mate. But I can see how it happens. It's a domino effect, isn't it? It just collapses around you sometimes. So back of the car, you broke down. What happened then?
Then I got to Peninsula Village after about 6 hours from there.
Right.
So this place here was a lockdown unit. So I spent 3 months in a lockdown. It was the basement of a cafeteria, chicken wire on the windows, big steel door. The staff working there had buzzers around their neck and they would restrain you if you didn't follow the rules. So they'd press this buzzer. It would light up the whole campus. Big horn. More staff would come running down. And that's all I saw for 3 months was that basement. You never left. Never left. And it was very strict rules. No talking, sit on your bed all day, raise your hand if you need something. And there were consequences. We used to do chores. We did a couple groups per day. I had a 1 hour family therapy session on the telephone with my folks, but those were the first couple were cut short because I just wanted to get out of there. See, I'd always manipulated my parents, my mom especially. Like my stepdad was more stern. He's a military background and had that stuff, but I think he would be more to enforce the rule. But my mom, I could always kind of weave and wiggle until now. The weaving and the wiggling was done. And
Yeah.
mama put her foot down and said, I don't care what it's like. You have to stay.
Yeah.
So I was pissed off. I mean, I was upset, really upset by it. And I felt like I was just left out to dry, man. And I didn't do anything for months. I just felt sorry for myself. I just stayed stuck. I did the bare minimum. I was in denial, didn't realize that I was the problem. It was everything else. It was this person, that situation. Poor me. And then one day, this fella that worked there, his name's Mr. Riddle. Mr. Riddle. Before I would ask a question, Dave, I'd raise my hand and they might call on you. They might not. You might not get that ask a question for a day. But when he would call on me, I would have to say the 12 steps from 1 to 12 to a T. If I didn't get it right, sit back down, try again later, or maybe tomorrow. So I'll never forget the fella because that was what I remember him by. But then I remember him by another thing too, is he told me, because a lot of people came into they would call it STU, the special treatment unit. A lot of fellas came in there, but then they would leave like a month later. And they had a cabin program where you went outside and they lived in these cabins in a small group and stuff. And I just wasn't buying in. So he told me this, that he said, Brad, and they never got personal with you, never really talked to you, or, they're not there to be your buddies or anything like that. But he kind of let his guard down a little bit this one day. And he said, Brad, if you're going to do anything here, you got to fake it till you make it.
Mm.
And I was like, oh yeah, whatever, dude. Whatever. I said, eventually my parents they'll see that this isn't going to work and they'll just pull me out of here. But I let that sit for a couple of days, and for a couple of days it sunk in. And I said, you know what? Like, let's see what, this guy, he was a smart guy, really smart guy. I said, let's see what this guy's talking about, because my way, like, look where I am. I tried my best and look where I'm at. This is ridiculous. I started doing everything that was asked. Whether I wanted to or not, I did everything. I participated. I woke up with a smile. I pretended to be happy. I did everything I had to do. And within a month, I was out in the cabin program, and I was there for a year.
So what started off as 3 months, she was there a year.
Yeah. It was a year, just 3 months in the special treatment unit. And then I went to the cabin program for the rest of the time.
So did that change things for you on that program, or did you
Yeah.
just do your time there and do what
No.
they asked for the rest of that time?
Yeah. No. Great question, Dave. No, I mean, it did. It definitely did change a lot. It
Yeah.
changed a lot. I reached a level there. They did level systems. You work through it. So you start out as a pre-mouse, and then you're a mouse, and then you're a bear, and then you get an eagle, and then you can get a buffalo if you come back. But I ended up reaching the level of an eagle, which maybe only one other person per year would ever do that. So, like, definitely accomplished a lot. And the whole idea behind the eagle too was like the bigger picture, being able to see it, and I never saw that in the beginning. It was just like the mouse, right? The mouse is all about themselves. You can't see far. You can't see really past your whiskers. You don't have any trust. You have to like work your way up. And it was an incredible transformation from like, day one to, 364 or whatever it was, right? But it was incredible. But I made changes when I got out of that program. I graduated high school. I was phenomenally connected with my parents. I got accepted into college. As soon after I got out of the program, I got my first job. I started college. I got my first apartment. I connected with this old friend, not one of the toxic girlfriends. This girl was just incredible. Connected with her. We started seeing each other. I was going to therapy. I was going to recovery groups. Like, I was doing everything after that program for a couple months. And then I started to do it my way again. I mean, that's kind of a long story short. I knew what was best for me, and I stopped going to therapy. I stopped doing my medications. I stopped going to my recovery groups. I started to invite people. I started to lower my boundaries. I started to invite people into my life that, like, I wouldn't say it was bad at first, but it ended up that way, And then I got into the drugs, and I got into the drinking. And once I found that, buddy, see, I had found a bit of peace in my life from the chaos throughout that treatment program. The thing was, Dave, I had to work really daggone hard at it, for a year. And then when I got into drinking and drugs, like, it only cost $5. You could buy it at a supermarket or buy it from a buddy, and $5 provided, a decent relief. And I didn't know about addiction. I didn't know about dependency or addiction or withdrawal symptoms. Or I know it sounds really naive, but I had no idea, man, what was going to happen.
It's fascinating, mate. I could talk to you for hours about that subject because, you went back to what you were used to, like chaos throughout your upbringing, moving, that place, coming out, going straight for a couple of months felt too hard to sustain. So you go even further back to chaos. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
how did that manifest then? Like bringing in the wrong people, I can relate to that. At the time, they felt like the right people. These were my saviors. Like, oh my God, they're laughing at everything I'm saying. And I'm getting drunk and it's making me feel good. It's giving me confidence and stuff like that. And my life felt super good at the time. Do you know what I mean? But it just spiraled.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, it was good because we were partying all the time. I knew this one guy and he was connected with it. He knew everybody. And we would go to parties every night. And
Mm,
it wasn't a disaster right from the beginning. That's definitely not my story. I
yeah.
was hooked from the beginning. I was hooked, but it was good. Like we were hanging out, we were partying. We used to have people over at the because then after a while into this, the girl, incredible girlfriend, a really good person that I was seeing, she moved out of the apartment. This is ridiculous. So then I moved my buddy moved in.
Yeah.
My buddy moved in and we were just partying. And I didn't start to lose stuff right away, but the big part is we were playing poker one night and a buddy of mine, he had a pill bottle and he was taking one of these took out the pill bottle. And I said, hey, if you got a headache or something, we can put the chips away and you can run your chips next time we play. No problem. Whatever, you can just go home, you don't have to stay. He said, oh no, this isn't Tylenol. This is the Percocet. I said, oh, well, what the heck does that do? Oh man, it makes you feel good. That's all I need to hear, Dave. I said, how much is it? Okay. And that's when I was introduced to the prescription pills, to the
Yeah.
Percocet, oxycodone. I mean, the entry level stuff. And man, once I had that first pill, I was just on cloud nine, man. Every insecurity, all that uncomfortableness in my skin and my skin crawling, and every doubt I had, every negative thought about myself, every failure I ever had, every lost relationship, everything, but it just went out the window, man. And I was like, where's this been my whole life? And I could never get enough after that point. And that's about 2000, so it's about 2007, 2008, when these pills were just hitting the streets in America and everywhere. And we had no idea at the time, right? We were all being sold this big dream that this stuff was not addictive. And now I didn't have a prescription for it. Like I never did, but they were everywhere, Dave. I mean, I had a buddy, and this would never happen today. I had a buddy, his dad would probably get about $5,000 street value of these medications dropped in his mailbox. Like that's how bananas it was.
Wow.
And like not even be home, they could just be sitting there. Like,
Yeah.
and so we were all, once I found the guys that were doing it, that were plugged in, it was just a daily, and I started doing cocaine too. I started doing cocaine too. So, I mean, those are like the big things for me, the drinking, the pills, and the cocaine.
Did you have a job?
Yeah, I had a job. Yeah, I used to work at my first job was at a Burger King. And the one of the stories about the Burger King was I had a younger brother too at this time. And my younger brother, I went to his kindergarten graduation. And I was old. Like, I don't think I was messed up at the graduation, but I was probably hungover or something. And they asked him like what he wanted to do with his life, my younger brother, and he said he wanted to be like me and work at Burger King. And I was like, that was kind of one of the first times where I was like, if they only knew, you know what I mean? If they only knew, nobody would want to be like me. It was sad, right? It was like, shit, you got this young fellow looking up to you, and like, you're not somebody that people should look up to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's sad. I can really feel that when you say that.
Yeah.
So you were holding down a job.
Yeah, I used to work at another place too, Red Robin gourmet burger place. Worked in the kitchen. Yeah, I was like my thing, like kitchen work. It was infested with drugs and booze and everything too, right?
So obviously that just continued to spiral, right? You start on all that and it just goes wild, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, I did, and then I had other stuff. I got to a point where I just didn't really care what it was. So then I found myself doing a little bit of Xanax too. But I was the Xanax too. I blacked out, and one time I blacked out, and I don't. It's so hard to even explain. The only way to put the pieces together is to have other people tell you. So that's what people told me from the story is that I blacked out and I got to work at this job. And when I was at work, I did a pretty good job until I got really bad into the cocaine, because I would do cocaine while I worked the job, and I'd have to go out to the bathroom and stuff. That's a whole nother story. But I got into the Xanax and I blacked out and I showed up to work and I was like out of my mind. And then they were like, you can't stay. You have to go home, but you can't drive home because you're out of your mind. But I drove home anyway. And it was like, man, what the heck is going on? But it's just wild looking back, Dave, that, man, for me, I just had so many situations where like I probably shouldn't be around. And
Mm.
it's like, why the heck, like how, what the heck happened, man? And even other times with impaired driving, which is like, it's just, there's no excuse for it, but it was just like I would black out. And it didn't happen all the time, but you wake up wondering like, what's going on? But you don't, but the way I drum it up, I wanted to stop so bad, I just couldn't stop. And I know for some people that might be hard to wrap their head around, but like anytime I would pick up stuff from the drug dealer, pick up alcohol from the store, man, I mean, there wasn't a bone or a thought in my body that really wanted to carry on, but I just couldn't stop.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Just blacking out life all the time. Just like a zombie almost, isn't it? Zombie
yeah,
state of living.
yeah. And it's embarrassing for me. It was embarrassing too because I wouldn't just black out and stay home. Like I would hang out with people. I remember one time I went out to a Mexican restaurant with some people, and it was just a disaster. I mean, just recalling it back, I'm just like I was ashamed of of that stuff, for people because they don't know what's going on. The other people with me, they didn't know. I really didn't know,
Yeah.
and it's like, man, I had to figure it out. And then when I turned 18, I got arrested again. I got arrested again. Buddy and I are breaking into a car. Well, not breaking into it. We went into a car. He did. And I learned about guilty by association. So he was there. I was the lookout. Doesn't matter. You both did it. You're both guilty. So the car, I see the blue lights come up. It's like 3 a.m, Dave. We're in this little small town. Blue light. I see two cruisers. Boom, Chargers, like the new ones at the time. And I was like, oh, we got to go. So we split. We're in the woods. We're running for like 45 minutes. And I'm like, oh, we're probably good. So we get to this pool. A lot of the complex housing complexes there have these pools. And then at the pool, they have the emergency phone. We didn't have any cell phones or anything. They had an emergency phone. So I called this, my girlfriend at the time. I said, you got to come pick us up, right? Don't ask too many questions. Like she knew things weren't good. And she came to pick us up. We were almost out of this town, Dave, and the lights turn on, whoop, whoop. And I'm like, oh man, like we're screwed, right? So we get arrested. That's a felony in North Carolina. And we got arrested that night, booked into jail. My brother bails me out the next day, I think $5,000 or something. And then, or bails me out that day. And I go home. I'm living at my parents' place at this time. Oh, I forgot to mention, I got kicked out of school. I got put on academic probation and then kicked out. My parents' money they gave me for college, gone. I got evicted from the apartment. The girlfriend left. I lost jobs. I was unemployable. Um, Everything was a complete disaster. My parents had bought me a new car. They gave me $15,000 for this new car. I lost the car. Police took the car. That was another thing I was ashamed of. Just to, my grandfather before he passed, he used to call me the $1 million man. It probably wasn't exactly a million, but just the amount of finances for interventions that my folks and my loved ones had spent over the years. So I get arrested that night. They forgot to put one of the charges on the books. So the cop shows up at my parents' place the next morning, 7 a.m. My younger brother's getting ready for school. My stepdad's there. In my parents' house, it's like 2 stories of the entryway, and then there's like a staircase that goes in the middle. So if you're up on the second floor, you can see down in the entryway. My stepdad comes and knocks on the door, and I thought that was kind of strange. And he said, "There's somebody here for you. It's the cops." And I'm like, "Oh God." Okay, I'm like, it can't be that bad. This is cool. Keep it cool. Keep it cool. No big deal. He didn't know I just got out of jail the night before. he's like, you're under arrest and stuff, and for last night. And I'm, oh man. And my younger brother's right there. And they're like putting me in handcuffs. And I saw the look on my stepdad's face. And I was like, you know, I was living there. I had nowhere else to live, but I just knew I was never welcome to live there again, you
Mm,
know?
mm.
So yeah, that was heavy, man. So I did that, and then I ended up getting on probation for that too. This time, Dave, I'll tell you something that I still don't have an answer to. They didn't drug test me this time. I was on probation. That wasn't part of the conditions.
Wow.
Yeah. So the party kept going, man.
How long did it go on for, Brad?
So when I was about what, 21, 22. So I ended up living on my brother's floor in his apartment. So he gave me a place. I jumped around from friends to friends to girlfriends to girlfriends places, and then I landed on my brother's floor. He had a roommate, and I slept on the couch sometimes, but if he had people over, it was rather embarrassing to have your brother, who, I used to kind of be somebody, like I was kind of somebody. I was never like a famous person, but like people enjoyed hanging out with me. I think when we used to party and stuff before the bottom fell out, it was a good
Mm,
time.
mm.
I think so anyway. So it was really embarrassing to like go from that to, like the shape I was in. So I woke up one morning and I got into heroin, dude. I got into heroin too. So that's where it transitioned for me and all the boys, right? The pills dried up. The government was like, oh, the pills are, everyone's hooked on them. So let's pull them back. Then we all went to the streets. We could, spend less money and get more stuff, right? So that's what we did. And this got out of control, just like the rest of it did. So I was living on his floor, man, and it was about that 21, 22. I woke up one morning. My life was just, to paint a big picture too, everything was just a mess, man. I wasn't working. I had no car. I was not in school. I wasn't doing anything. I would just, my only goal in the day, Dave, when I woke up was to get $15 in my pocket. If I had $15, I could get a 24 Keystone Light, 24 beer, and I could go over to Food Lion and get my 24 beer, and I could get 2 packs of cigarettes, buy one, get one free menthols. When they first came out, Marlboro menthols, they used to have a free pack attached. So I could do that, and I could sit by the pool, and I could find a few buddies who would join me and see what we could get up to.
Yeah.
The faster I could get outside of myself, the better. Um, and to do it with somebody else was a bonus, but I also didn't have a problem doing it by myself. So I woke up on that morning and the sun was kind of shining in through the shades, right? You have those little holes where the little string goes. It's
Yeah.
hitting me in the eye, man. And there's so much more to the story, but to paint a picture for this part is I had this weird thought of like, hey, why don't you try to get sober? Like your life is shit. And I was like, yeah, kind of had this internal dialogue with myself, like, and I kind of really got honest, like, you're gonna die. Um, it's not gonna be a good story. That's gonna be a reality because I just went 110 every day. I just didn't care what was in my way. I just couldn't live with myself or live with what I saw in the mirror. So I said, yeah, that's that. I'm talking to myself here, right? Not like out loud, but
Mm.
in my thoughts. And I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea, but like, I don't know how to do that. But I gave it a little bit more attention, and I had this other thought. It was like, just call somebody, get some help. So I called my grandparents all the way up in Canada. I said, look, guys, I got to get off the drugs and stuff. They had no idea. I hadn't seen them in years. I was too embarrassed. They drove down like 2 days later. They came and picked me up in North Carolina. They had arranged for me to go to a detox in South Florida. And like they're 60, 60s, probably 70. It's a long drive. It's probably a day drive. And they arranged for me to go to this place. I went to this detox, and it was great, man. It was great. It was 7 days, right? It's never long enough for most of us to do anything in 7 days. But then, so I got off everything, man, cold turkey, and it was like it was a long 7 days. It was rough, but that was sort of the beginning. That was like the seed planted of like, hey, you got to do something. I didn't get sober then. I didn't turn it all around, to end the story that good. But I moved back up with my grandparents because I knew the police were looking for me. They were calling me all the time, Dave, you gotta what would they say? You have to sign for this package. You have a package to sign for. And I was like, God, whoever this is, trust me, nobody's sending me packages. I don't know anybody to send packages. And they were doing all kinds of tactics. And I was just kind of laying low, not on purpose, but just because I didn't have any resources or a job or a car or anything. But it's really weird how things play out when they're supposed to. Because during that time when I did have active warrants, I got pulled over by a sheriff. One time I was headed to the methadone clinic and there's a fork in the road and I was flustered because this sheriff was right on my tail and I swerved over at the last second. And the sheriff pulls me over and I'm driving my girlfriend's grandmother's car. And she pulls me over and she's like, "Are you lost?" And I was like, "No, I just was confused about the signs and everything." And she's like, "Do you have your driver's license?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I have it." She's like, "Whose vehicle is this?" I said, "It's my girlfriend's grandmother's car. She just lets me borrow it from time to time." The thing is, Dave, if she would have ran my information then, that would have been it.
Yeah.
It's warrants. And I was in a really, really bad spot then. I was in a really bad spot. And that could have really changed the entire course of everything. And I had another interaction with police where they didn't run my name. They just looked at me like, "Oh, the guy looks like a great guy," like right. Um, so my grandparents came to my brother's place one morning after I got out of the detox. A couple of days later, they're like, "It's crazy here. Like the cops are at your parents' place, and we think you should come up to Canada with us and live there." And I was opposed to the idea because I had friends and I had spent like majority of my life there in Carolina. But I said, "You know what? Like, let's do it. Let's check it out." Right. So I went up there. And now the thing is, I got off all the drugs. But I was still drinking every day when I went up there. So, I mean, it was progress. For a guy like me, that was massive progress. And I started working this painting job. And I started I started doing, I started showing up for a job and had a full-time job and stuff like these were, and it was really rough for the first couple months because I'm still going through all the withdrawals from all this. Like, I mean, the whole cocktail of stuff I was on.
Mm.
And it just like changed, but I kind of just kept putting one foot in front of the other. I used to go to occasional meetings here or there, Celebrate Recovery. I used to go to AA groups, I used to go to NA groups. I used to go to smart recovery groups and I seen a psychiatrist. I was trying to get help. I just, I was just taking it slow, I guess, slowly heading to where I knew eventually I would land. And then January 11th, 2010, I went back to visit my family. I'd reconnected with the old girlfriend. That was really good news. She's incredible. See my brother, see my friends and stuff. It had been about like 9, 10, 11 months, maybe a year I'd been up in Canada. So I said, you know what, like things pretty stable. I'll go back for a visit. And when I got off the plane in North Carolina, well, at customs in Toronto, they asked me a million questions, Dave, million questions. And I said, this is weird. I should just go back. I had every thought like I should just go back. And I didn't. I went through with it. And then when I got off the airplane in North Carolina, I got arrested. And that was those old warrants that had come back, and I got charged with three counts of drug trafficking, selling narcotics to an undercover police officer, like years prior.
Well, they said they were waiting for you.
They were waiting for
Oh
me.
my God. And you were getting things on track as well.
Yeah, trying.
Oh my God, man. That's awful. So what happened?
Yeah, so they and this was kind of like a second sort of, I call it a spiritual awakening in a sense, to where I'm sitting they handcuff me, they bring me out to this cop car. It's sitting out there in front of the airport there. And the airports have those little drive arounds where you can't really park for long. You just kind of drive around until you see your person. Out of the corner of my eye, I mean, the timing couldn't have been more perfect. I saw this young lady that was coming to pick me up. And just this look on her face was just smiling, grinning ear to ear, excited for this day. I was excited too. And man, I had this feeling come over me, buddy, of like enough of the bullshit. like
Mm.
enough of letting people down, because that's what I had done, is just sold dreams to people. It's enough of this crap. Um, and I said, and I kind of had this internal dialogue, like, if you're gonna want to make your life better, like, you're gonna have to clean up completely. Enough is enough, man. Like, there's enough of this stuff. And yeah, that was it, buddy. That was where it all began. That's when I really put one foot in front of the other. Um, and it was really, it's crazy to say this, dude, but it was probably the best thing that ever happened in my entire life. The timing was right.
Yeah.
I was in a better place to kind of go through that. To go through all that stuff, and talking with the girl afterwards, like, she was she parked the car, couldn't find me, right? Parked the car, and she went into the airport. I had a suitcase I was bringing, but they weren't going to have room for it at the jail. Like, they don't, it's not a storage facility. So they were like, I don't know, just leave it here. I was like, whatever. Like, I don't really care what you do with it. So they put it at like customer service at the airport. And they were calling out over the loudspeaker, like, her name and she was like, oh, well, she's like, I thought you were going to be there. Like, couldn't find me. I couldn't find you. It was going to be like this happy ever after movie connection thing. And it was like, to get the suitcase, you know what I mean? And I'm like, fuck. And it just hit, man, that it was like, enough's enough, man. So I got a $250,000 bail. So I obviously wasn't getting out of jail. And I ended up spending a year in jail.
Um,
After that.
that petrifies me, that whole subject of jail. Like, all my life, it's like, no, I watch prison films and I'm absolutely petrified. But did that year like help you put things in perspective? Because I hear that quite a lot, spending time. I don't recommend it, but
Yeah. I mean, I think it did, I think I needed to feel it, I needed to miss the birthdays, the holidays, the good days, the bad days. I needed to see what that was like. I really needed a true feel for what I didn't want my life to look like. Because here I was, 20 years old, 20 something years old, and I was already a convicted felon at 18. I couldn't get a job at McDonald's or Burger King or Bojangles or anywhere. They ask you if you're a felon, they check into it. And here I was too, with all this other stuff, it's like, I needed that ultimate accountability of like, hey, there's no, like, this is literally going to be your life. Do you want that to be your life? And the answer was no. The answer was no every time. But it definitely was helpful. I plugged in, and it's funny. It's funny you say that though about the prison shows, because actually these other guys in the jail, they used to love watching those prison shows. I'm like, why do you guys watch this crap?
I know.
They used to love that stuff. But I really used it to develop who I was as a person and who I wanted to be. It was my time to reinvent. It was my time to start to build a foundation to do more with my life. I honestly had no idea what that looked like. I just put one foot in front of the other every, day after day after day.
What, so was it just, do you think you were sick to death of living a life of chaos? Because from 6 years old to then, it sounds like a complete car crash. And when you say you had suicidal thoughts and you didn't want to be here anymore, and then all of a sudden you're like, I really need to do something with my life. What was it, just the catalogue of events that got you to there? Or did you have like a spiritual intervention? What was it, do you think, that happened?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it sort of came to this place of like, I didn't really want to live the way I was living anymore. And I didn't really want to die either. But kind of put me in a spot. I made a pact with myself. I made a deal with myself that I'll give this a solid try. If it
Yeah.
doesn't work out, I'll go back to the other way. Here we are, baby. It worked out.
Well, do you
Yeah.
know what, Brad? The only reason I say that is because that's where I got to in my life was nowhere as near chaotic as that. But I never compare because we've all got our own story, right? And my
Mhm.
life was chaotic for decades. And it got to a place at 54 years old that I actually thought to myself, I could literally die any day from what I'm doing here. And that was enough for me to go, I've got a life here. Life is valuable. You know, you see people dying of cancer and stuff, and there's nothing they can do about that. And for me, it's like I I've got a choice here. I can choose how my life moves forward here. And it sounds like that's what happened to you. It's like some kind of intervention happened in your mind that
Mhm.
shows where you are now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the seed was planted long before I actually got to the place. It was probably planted like when I was 17.
Mm.
Like you can do better. You know, it wasn't.
And I wonder if it's your little brother looking up at you as well that planted that seed as well, you know, like you feeling how you felt when he looked up at you and said, I want to be like Brad. And there was that sense of, yeah, I want to be like me, buddy. Like,
Yeah.
you know, these little seeds go in, don't they? And you might not realize at the time, but they plant firmly. And later on in life, you quite often look back at it and go, yeah, I was ready a long time before this has actually happened. And this is what gives hope to people. Hearing these kind of stories, it's like, you know, like your story, my story, all the other people, and you got your amazing podcast, which are life stories as well. And people resonate to them, don't they? Not quite all the same, but it's the hope people get from these stories that, blimey, like you clawed your way back from all that to be the man you are now is incredible. So, how did that look moving forward then for you? What did you do? What
Yeah.
changed?
Yeah, I mean, it was slow. It was a slow process to so after I got out of jail, the US Marshals picked me up. I went to a bunch of different jails and stuff all over the eastern US, Atlanta and Tennessee, and so I got put in ICE immigration and customs enforcement because I was a Canadian citizen and I only had a green card in the US. I wasn't actually a citizen. So after I got done with the jail time, the sentencing that the judge gave me, which was a whole nother incredible story, but I got deported. So U.S. Marshals picked me up, brought me to the back of the Atlanta International Airport, and I got sent back to Canada. Got a lifetime ban from the U.S.
Oh,
And it was the best day of my life. I was out, I was headed home to eat a home cooked meal. But the craziest thing is my grandmother um ordered this fish and chips. So I want you to picture eating like rice and like low grade garbage for a year, and then your grandmother, beautiful as she is, gets you fish and chips. Oh, the stomach pain after that, Dave, was just unreal. It was just unreal. But I had to, what I feel like why it helped me so much is because the door for the past was dang near closed. There was
mm,
no going back. There was no wiggle room. What I had known and what I had become was done. That was over. Like it was completely done. That's what I needed. I don't do well with halfway stuff. I'm an
yeah,
all or nothing fella. And when I got in trouble that time, they went all or nothing. They went all the way. And it was great because I got a chance to start over and start
yeah,
to work on stuff. And I had set two goals when I was in jail. I wanted to be an addiction counselor and I wanted to get a German Shepherd. And in both of them I got accomplished. So I was home for about a year and then I went back to school. I went back to college. Like who would have thought? Like yeah, never did college or did well before. I went back to college and I graduated to be an addiction counselor and I started working at this treatment center for youth. They were between 13 and like 19 or 20. And they used to live there. It was a residential program, 6-month program. So I worked there. I got a job there. It's actually It was actually where I met my wife too. I met her there. I was doing a lot of volunteering. I was getting a lot of support. I was going to recovery groups, recovery meetings, connecting with other people. Trying to like find my people, right? Like I wanted to find winners, not just anybody. I didn't just link up with anybody. Like I wanted to find people who were winning, whether they were sober or not. I wanted to find winners
Mm.
because I wanted to learn. That's what I did when I was in jail. Like I hung out with the older boys. We kick it, we'd play chess, we chop it up about life. It was none of sadly enough, Dave, it probably wouldn't have made it onto the prison shows because it was rather boring. But it was good for me because I just soaked everything up
Mm.
from from these fellas. And I try to kind of bring that to the outside world, right? And then I got that job. And a couple years after that, man, I bought a house. And now I've got three beautiful children. I mean, who would have thought, right? Like that's crazy. It's really crazy to me because that I never, like, when I was growing up and even in my early 20s, dude, I never thought of this stuff, man. Like me, like having anything. At the end, dude, I had like 4 or 5 pair of clothes. And I used to wash my clothes in the kitchen sink because I didn't have a quarter or two for the laundromat. And it was like I never envisioned um having anything. And I'm not like a huge materialistic type person, but it's nice to be able to see some hard work pay off for people around you too, and just relationships and everything like that, right? Just to get to place I never, dude. I still gotta pinch myself, Dave, and I ain't
Yeah.
got much, but what I do got, buddy, I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, and you help so many people. As I said from the beginning, when I first started looking on Instagram, um, putting in sobriety, sober, recovery, up you popped. And I remember you had 35,000 followers and you was like a god to me, Brad. You was, mate. And I used to like listen to your lives and that and just think, God, this man is everything to me. You gave me hope, you gave me inspiration. Um, and you do so much and it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And that's the good side of social media, isn't it? Like the support and the network and your groups and whatever. Um, does any of your past ever bite you on the arse, or do you feel like you've dealt with it and moved on now?
Well, no, I mean, I still struggle, not every day. I mean, I'm
Mm,
still struggling. I wouldn't say I struggle to stay sober, but I do struggle with life. Being a
mm,
father, having 3 kids. I mean, I have 5, 3, and 1 year old, and being a husband and stuff, and maintaining relationships and running a business or 4 businesses and doing stuff. I mean, I still sometimes feel like I'm not good enough.
yeah.
But I'm just like, just do the best you can, man. Best you can with what you got. And things will work out. In all those situations in my life, I could go over more and more and more about the timing. So it's really hard for me to question if things are not going well. There's been so many times in my life where the timing from the universe or whatever, boy, it lined up more perfect than I could have drawn it up.
Yeah.
So I do struggle. I just got belief in something bigger than me, man. I'm just here playing my part and things. So if I work hard, now I don't just lay in bed all day and expect things are going to happen for me because that's not going to work. But
Mm,
I know if I play my part and I show up and I do the best I can and I give back and I try to help and I'm just trying to be a good person,
mm.
I'll
Oh,
land exactly where I'm supposed to.
yeah, 100%. And we are so resilient. When we think about the scrapes, I always say to people that right at the beginning, they say, I don't feel worthy enough of being here. I've got no confidence. I hate myself and that. And I always try to sort of tap into that motivational skill of helping people feel enough, just do today and then get up again tomorrow and do the day again. And like always describe it like a house of cards you build and that. And in the beginning, it's easier to kick over, isn't it? But if you build one layer, two, three, four, five layers, you become more protective and you start to look in the mirror at yourself and go, I'm actually doing this. I remember my first week, I couldn't go a day without drinking. And I mean drinking, I mean a liter of vodka. You know, I couldn't imagine myself go. I used to play football and come home at 11 p.m. and think I've got till 12 to get drunk because I would never drink into the next day. It was a weird, unless I was out clubbing. But if I was in on my own, it was this weird timetable that I had. So I would drink and drink and drink till I was so drunk by midnight. It was an hour gap when I should have just gone to bed. It's this weird. So for me to go 1 day, 2 day, 3 days a week, and then it was a month, it's like, I can't believe it. It's like celebrating 10 years a month was. But gradually, bit by bit, I started to get my self-esteem back and that. And I talk about when I was up that mountain recently in Morocco and that, and I looked up there and I thought, I didn't even doubt that I would get up there. And I think that was because of the life I'd had, the resilience I built up of actually, you can do anything now, mate, because you've got out of this hell that you was in. So you can do anything. So if I'm having a bad day, I just look at it as one of them days now. I don't like go on about it or think, do you know what, everything's terrible. I just get on with it. And I go to bed and think tomorrow's going to be a better day. And it's the same ethos, how I live my life now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
So before we go, Brad, and I'm so grateful, mate, that you shared that as a powerful story. Tell me about your podcast, what you're up to. I know where that podcast come from as well.
Yeah, the Sober Motivation podcast was inspired by Sober Dave himself.
Well, we had a little chat, didn't we? And you said, you're thinking about doing it. I said, go for it, mate. Honestly, do you find it helps you as well talking to people, hearing their stories?
I love it, man. If there was a way to do it, Dave, where I could support my family, I would literally do podcasting all day, every day. Yeah. I enjoy that. I enjoy it that much, and it's so powerful. And there's never a day that goes by that I don't hear that it's helpful, even though I have a hard time believing it sometimes. I don't know if that's something you can relate to.
Yeah.
But sometimes people send me this message. I got one yesterday about, this fella, and he's like, without the podcast, he might not be around. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, I'm so grateful for that. But like, I'm like, I don't know if why am I having a hard time believing it? That it's that helpful.
The same. People. I know. I don't know what it is. I do not know what it is, but I'm the same. I get loads of messages saying your podcast has literally saved me and whatever. And I'm thinking, well, I'm just having a conversation with people sharing their stories and that. And it's like, but I think it's the impact it has, like the hope it gives people, people relating to the stories and giving them hope, and you provide a tool for people like I do, it's part of the toolbox, sober toolbox, amongst the Quick Lit and the community and whatnot. And, thing is, it's like, I'm going to do my audio book soon. And people these days like to listen to things. I'm terrible at reading. Like, I'll read a line and then I'll have to go back to it. Not even a paragraph, a line. And not that kind of line, Brad. Let's not go down there. But I'm terrible, but I can listen to things, and I might be plodding about doing something indoors, and I have my headphones on. It goes in, and I think this is why these podcasts are so powerful.
Yeah, no, I think so too, and just the flexibility you can have with it. You can have You can be cutting your grass, hitting the or even having a shower, and you could put a podcast on Sober Dave in the background. But yeah, the podcast has been incredible. I mean, I've been blown away. I mean, it's just so many people checking it out and so many people just being part of it, and just we're having just lots of fun and people sharing it. Like I crossed paths with somebody, Dave, and they were part of an outpatient treatment program, and they do Zoom meetings, and somebody had mentioned about the podcast. to them. They got on the podcast. They hopped on this Zoom support group I was doing. And I'm just like, how are you people hearing about this stuff? And it's just like, I don't know. I think if you just, I guess if you just do good work and you stay consistent, people will find it. That's the hope, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you smash them out as well. I can see how you love them because your podcast has exploded, and I'm just rattling my brain now to remember the guy from Everyone Loves Raymond, the
Oh,
brother. Was it
Brad Garrett.
Brad Garrett? And you got him on, didn't you? And like, I love him so much. He's a legend, isn't he?
Yeah, we've got to get him on yours now.
We have.
Well, to
He's a busy
I've
man,
got
though,
some.
isn't he?
Yeah, he is, but yeah, they move a little different, right? They just move a little different. We just have to move a little different sometimes too. But we can try to make it happen. I've got some really big guests too coming up this week. Actually, I have these two episodes, these two guests, Dave. I manifested before I started the show. I said, dude, if I'm gonna do a show, I want these two people. And also Dane Cook might come on the show. I don't know if you're familiar with Dane Cook, comedian.
No.
You're not.
Sorry,
Okay.
mate.
Look him up. Look him up after this. You will
I will.
recognize from a ton of movies. What is he? Have you ever watched Employee of the Month?
No.
Okay. Look him up. He might come on the show. But yeah, I manifested these two people because their stories are incredibly powerful. And it's just weird how it all kind of happens. But I don't know. We're just going on and on here, Dave. So
I know we're zipping a bud here because we're chatting for another 3 hours, and people are like, "All right, we've heard your story. Get on, I've got work to do here." But thank you so much, Brad. I'm going to put all your details in the show notes, including your wonderful podcast. Keep on doing what you're doing, man, because you're fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave.